Fiction in general is full of crazy powerful characters, but very few are as hacked as the Scarlet King from the SCP universe and the Chaos King from the Marvel universe, who are both immensely powerful beings capable of wiping out all of creation with ease. What's good, boys? So ever since I introduced people to the power of the Scarlet King and the SCP multiverse in general, many people wanted to see him go up against another character who was just as overpowered. In this case, I believe that the Chaos King from Marvel was a really good fit because they have really similar aspects, goals, abilities, and power. Actually, they're almost too similar, but that is none of my business though. Now we're gonna step into some crazy high scaling, but bear with me guys, as we go over who would actually stomp out the other if they actually fought. I can already tell that the comment section is going to implode, but screw it, you know? We gotta answer this, so without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in, boys. To start us off, I think that we should cover the Chaos King because he is the OG god of primordial nothingness who debuted in the Chaos War run during 2010. Jesus, that was a long time ago, I feel old. The Chaos King was originally known as Amatsu-Mikaboshi, and yes, I pronounced it correctly for all the hyperweaves out there. He was believed to be the Japanese god of darkness and death, but he is much more than that, as I'll get into later on. Amatsu existed before creation itself, and due to him representing a primordial void, he wanted to consume the entire multiverse into himself because that was his purpose. To begin his quest, he started consuming gods all around the Marvel multiverse to feed on their abilities and power. And Amatsu-Mikaboshi is no laughing matter because even early on, before he ascended to higher levels of power, just by using a little bit of what he had, he was able to severely cripple and kill Zeus, who is the Olympian king and is a really powerful Sky Father in his own right. Although Zeus and other Sky Fathers don't have as many feats as Odin does, he is implied to be equal or very comparable to him via guides and statements in the comic books, which are very fundamentally important to scale him from and will help scale the Chaos King as well. And if you really want to get technical, Zeus has been able to obliterate the Hulk so badly that his regeneration was completely gone. It was yeah bro, we ain't working. But it doesn't really matter because the Hulk is fodder. So yeah, sorry not sorry. Anyways, Odin has been able to shake the 9 realms in his battle with Surtur, and the 9 realms have been referenced as being universes with their own space-time continuums and vast cosmos. Odin has also been able to tear the fabric of the multiverse in his battle with Seth, and they could have very well wiped out the 616 universe and all of its realms, making him low multiversal to mid multiversal even while weakened. Amatsu-Mikaboshi went from universe to universe, from pantheon to pantheon, consuming and defeating an infinite amount of Skyfathers across the entire Marvel multiverse, until he eventually was powerful enough to unleash his true form, being the Chaos King. Amatsu-Mikaboshi also managed to kill off Nightmare and wipe out the Dream Dimension, which put virtually everyone that was of a mortal mind in a deep sleep or a coma-like state. Satan himself, possibly one of the most evil dudes you can think of. I mean, he did make Fortnite and Fallout 76. I mean, he got slapped so hard in his own realm that even with the power of the whole afterlife or the whole hell, Amatsu-Mikaboshi was like, I don't care if you're good, I don't care if you're bad. I mean, it doesn't matter because I'm nothingness. I want to consume everything. So he did eventually wipe out every afterlife across every dimension, and it got so badly that death itself was like, nah bro, I'm leaving this shit. Basically, she did like a Niles Vanish, was like, peace out, I'm outie, left the multiverse, and the whole Marvel multiverse experienced a realm where there was no death. So basically, the dead were amongst the living, and nobody could ever die. The 616 Skyfathers, the ones that did survive, they were hiding, they were like, yo bro, we gotta chill out here because this Chaos King is gonna kill us all. But the Chaos King found them out, he's like, hey, why you bitches hiding? And he consumed all of them and their realms simultaneously and got even more powerful. Using his mind hacks, he was able to take over the minds of the gods and make them serve under him and his army. Now this is really impressive because even Phoenix Jean Grey or Professor Xavier, some of the most powerful telepaths in Marvel, would not be able to pull that off. Now you might be thinking to yourself, how was this dude quote unquote defeated if he was so damn powerful? Well, it is really simple actually. Hercules got some amazingly written, clearly not plot convenient amp, clearly not lazy writing, in which he had the ability to call upon anyone that he wanted to help him fight off against the Chaos King. So instead of calling upon someone useful like the Master Chief or Anthony Fantano with his light 6 to strong 7 jutsu, or even the M&M's guy. No, he called upon multi-eternity. So Hercules was telling Eternity, yo, like, we're struggling out here, we're losing this war, can you help us out, can you fight the Chaos King for us? And Eternity was like, nah. And Eternity's reasoning, apart from being a little bitch, was, I cannot fight him because he is the exact opposite of what I am, he is the anti-god, and if I try to fight him, it would be like fighting myself. In a way, the abstracts were acting like, absentee parents that didn't want to deal with their children. They're like, yo, I'm gonna get some, like, milk from the gas station, I'll be really back. Like, I'll really be back this time. But they never show up, so yeah, it do be like that for the heroes. Then we are met with Amadeus Cho, who is like one of the most intelligent beings in Marvel, and he determined, wow, the Chaos King is so radical and so chatty. Like, he's already wiped out 99% of the entire Marvel multiverse. And this is really consistent with like the entire Chaos War run and also the tie-ins. I can't believe I read some of those. And also the guides saying, yeah, the Chaos King can clearly wipe out all of creation if he really wanted to, and he very nearly came to doing so. Amadeus also determined that it was mathematically impossible, like no joke, for him to actually lose. And even with the massive amp that Hercules got, clearly not through a writer's blessing or whatever, being the writer's favorite, they still could not defeat the Chaos King, so they had to think of some ass-pulley way to actually end the story. So in order to defeat him, you might be thinking, oh, they got the Living Tribunal, they got, some OP character, they got the Infinity Gauntlet, even though it wouldn't really work in this situation, but no, none of that happened. All they did was quote-unquote trick him into manifesting into a pocket universe that was separated from the rest of the multiverse, and then once he was in there, they sealed him away and yada yada, happy ending, sing kumbaya, and everyone was restored, blah blah blah. Now, before we move into the Scarlet King, we do have to debunk the notion that the Chaos King is only universal. And I'm not even joking, I have seen many moronic comments, state, oh yeah, he's only universal, he's fodder. But nah, dude, it makes no sense whatsoever on a narrative, statement, and feat sense. Like, literally in every single level, it would make no sense for him to be universal only. And as I previously mentioned, the Sky Fathers like Odin and Zeus can clearly wipe out universes or a multiverse if they really wanted to. And I mean, I must be blind or something because clearly we don't see Amatsu-Mikaboshi clear out several multiversal level beings in all these panels, right? Clearly not, like, nah bro, I'm making it up. I made up the scan, duh. Not to mention that the Chaos King was stated to being a bigger threat than Thanos was with the Infinity Gauntlet. And Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet is clearly powerful enough to toy around with like many of these embodied abstracts who are at least high multiversal if not far higher. And can somebody please explain to me how Amatsu-Mikaboshi is only universal when he drove away the embodiment of death from the multiverse and Eternity himself was like, yeah, I ain't dealing with that dude, like I can deal with Thanos but not this guy. So yeah, narratively, and going by feats and scaling and statements, the Chaos King is clearly multiversal. Now for those that don't know who the Scarlet King is, he is a part of the SCP Foundation universe. The SCP Foundation is this worldwide organization that deals with securing, containing, and protecting a lot of these anomalous objects or extra-dimensional beings that might try to wreak havoc upon the Earth. Some of these most popular SCPs are SCP-343, SCP-999, who is completely adorable, SCP-682, and SCP-049. However, some of these SCP gods exist far beyond the scopes of many of these individual files, so to read up on them you essentially have to go into the website and read up on the lore, and that is where it gets really interesting. Okay, and I just want to bring this up really quickly because for some reason some people think like this, so no, the SCP Foundation is not real, as hard as it is for me to say that. I can't believe I've had to, I actually have to explain this to people, bro. I've had people comment on my video saying, hey man, is the SCP Foundation real? Is it like a government cover-up? Is it like Area 51? And I'm like, bro, it's obviously fiction. Actually, hold up. I'm a moron. Pause. I'm a moron because there are obviously orange tickle monsters running around and a genocidal crocodile that we can't kill. Yeah, obviously. So the Scarlet King was known as Karak, and he was the youngest amongst his siblings, and he was, I guess, quote unquote, really woke on Twitter regarding like, pain and loneliness, and he was like, it really hurts to exist, therefore I'm gonna go ahead and wipe out everything in creation because I'm edgy like that. So how would the Scarlet King, meet his quota, reach his goal to wipe out everything? Well, just like the Chaos King, he went around consuming countless amounts of gods, like for however long, so that he could develop his power and abilities. And he was basically boosting for XP for who knows how long. And here's the crazy thing, guys. Even the most fodder SCP gods are far beyond the scope of uncountable infinite dimensions. And the Scarlet King ate a countless amounts of those to get more powerful, and that is not even at the scope of his power. So yeah, we're getting into some really spicy stuff here. Now, to really scale the Scarlet King, we have to go off of like two of the most popular SCP gods in the SCP mythos, that being McCain and Yaldabaoth. And for those that have read the SCP mythos, you might know that Yaldabaoth is the goddess of flesh and, instinct, and she is basically the worship or the figure of worship for this Sarkic cult or meat cult. And it is really weird. I mean, I don't know how to explain it without getting demonetized, but it is basically like the Flood and people are into that stuff. But that is basically the best way I can explain it to you guys. Then McCain, he is a lot more normal. His followers are a lot less cringy and weird, but he is the god of wisdom and technology. And essentially, Yaldabaoth and McCain had a really big disagreement over how they wanted humanity to act. So Yaldabaoth was like, okay, I want humanity to act more on nature and instinct rather than through intellect and wisdom or whatever the hell, right? And McCain was like, no, because humans are fundamentally stupid, so they should use technology and intellect to get, past that level of intelligence. And you might think, okay, they're just gonna be arguing over this, they're not gonna do anything, but no, Yaldabaoth was wilding the hell out. She was like tripping. She was like, okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and manifest across every single reality, every single dimension, every single timeline and universe, and wipe all of it out because I'm just that mad. And that is like a really common concept in the SCP mythos, or basically just any mythology in general. Like the gods are just gonna get mad over some dumb shit. So yeah, basically all of creation was gonna be wiped out by Yaldabaoth. And the Scarlet King stands far beyond the scope of her power and many of these other gods that I'm gonna mention. So in order to save creation, McCain was like, yo, you need to chill the F out, bro. So he went ahead and shattered himself, made himself into a prison, and sealed her away, and he basically saved the day. Psych. Because the Scarlet King later came in, he was like, yo, I hope you don't mind me, but I'm gonna go ahead and like take all this out. So that is when stuff really got real. So as soon as the Scarlet King felt that he had enough power, as soon as he emerged, all of creation itself shook. Now, I don't know how the hell you would calculate that, but that is probably some insane number. And to go over his abilities, the Scarlet King can manipulate time, reality, fate, the souls, matter, basically anything in between, because he does hold more power than many of these other gods who can do basically the same things, and he is the father of these other SCPs who have similar abilities. Luckily though, for the Scarlet King, he did not have to do much because his army was already incredibly powerful. The true form of SCP-682, who is his child, and SCP-076-2, also known as Abel, they were able to defeat gods who were on the level of McCain and Yaldabaoth by themselves. So keep that in mind, just the foot soldiers of the Scarlet King's army could already defeat beings who can wipe out all of creation just by manifesting themselves. So after the Scarlet King and his army was able to defeat the initial wave of gods, they were able to heavily damage the Tree of Knowledge and its roots, and then the Scarlet King went on to fight off with the brother's death. Now, their brother's death were getting, beaten down so badly. They were really damn powerful, but nah, the Scarlet King was just too chatty, so they had to, the story had to fundamentally nerf him in 3 ways in order to make it possible. Fortunately, though, they did not have to use any seal no jutsu this time around. And just like with the Chaos King, the Scarlet King also channeled his power throughout his entire army so that they could do some work. Secondly, the seals that the Scarlet King had set up for himself a long time ago were essentially degraded, they were gone, which made him very vulnerable to a lot of attacks and abilities. Finally, the brother's death had to summon these 7 warriors with 7 spears, and the thing about these 7 spears is that they were imbued with the king's own power, so essentially they used his own power against him and stabbed him in all over the place. But even after all of that commotion went down, they still fundamentally lost because all of creation was in ashes, it was basically all wiped out. The Tree of Knowledge was heavily damaged, and all these other realms and structures were also damaged. But anyways, now that I went over both of these characters and their feats, now it's time to go into who would actually win. Now, I'm not gonna lie, but it was really hard because these guys have a really complex nature to them, and there's also a lot more, I guess you could say, fundamental differences regarding their cosmology. So in Marvel Comics, it has been repeatedly mentioned that there are infinite dimensions, infinite universes, and infinite timelines. It's also been implied that there are transfinite, or I guess you could say sets or numbers larger than infinity. Now you might be thinking, wait, but how can anything be larger than infinity? How can you even count past infinity? And that is really simple. So in comics and in real life, we do have these concepts known as sets of infinity, and we can actually somewhat count them or measure them, or at least attempt to, using the Aleph Null. So going off of that, the Scarlet King had already wiped out far more, a far larger level of dimensions than the Chaos King ever did, but there is one fundamental difference as well. Now you guys might be thinking, wait, but if the Scarlet King is uncountable infinite dimensional and the Chaos King is countable infinite dimensional, then why is this even a debate? Why is this even a versus matchup? Isn't it like a stomp? But no. The Chaos King has a really interesting nature because he is an aspect of Oblivion. Now Oblivion, I have done videos on him before. It is actually really possible that he came before the One Above All, and that's something for another day. But essentially, the Living Tribunal, Eternity, Infinity, all of these abstracts came from him and will go to him once they all die. And outerversal characters are not bound by death or dimensions or, time, space, or whatever concept you can think of on any level. Oh yeah, not to mention that the Chaos King, once he absorbed everything, or he thought he absorbed everything, he became the true Chaos King, and although we don't know how much more powerful he is, even if we imply that he is comparable to the Living Tribunal, that would already make him far beyond eternity, infinity, and death. So the kings should have really similar levels of speed, and basically you cannot measure them because they are beyond time and space to such a high degree. They should also both be high hyperversal, and they have really similar abilities as well. So if they were doing a 1v1 on Rust, quick scoping on Modern Warfare 2, then the Chaos King would get obliterated because the Scarlet King exists on a much higher level of infinity, and he also scales much higher than other beings who can already wipe out uncountable infinite dimensions. The second scenario would be if these two guys had their respective armies, and you might think, oh, that's even harder for the Chaos King to win, but not really, judging by his nature. The Chaos King does have the ability to absorb and eat many of these gods, their abilities and power, and he could eventually work his way up to eventually match the Scarlet King's power. Now the thing is that the Chaos King can also be really dumb about it, because if he eats too much or too quickly, then that would make him really vulnerable and he has to slow down. Oh yeah, and not to mention that the Chaos King has really powerful mind hacks, which he could use to turn the tide, but then again, the Scarlet King also has that ability, so yeah. Now, if we want to imply that the Chaos King is inherently outerversal, going off like him being a connection or an aspect of Oblivion, then he would inherently be more powerful than the Scarlet King. But then again, there are arguments that imply that other SCP gods can actually manipulate platonic forms, and that the realm that they live in is also a platonic realm. Another example is that the library, which is connected to the Tree of Knowledge, is the platonic concept of the library. Now, for those that don't know what a platonic concept is, it is essentially like the true form or the essence or the blueprint of whatever it might be. So you can take like a controller, a TV, like a sword, and its true form would remain the same across every single point into reality, and would also be atemporal and aspatial. So if you really want to accept those statements, you could argue that the Scarlet King is outerversal. However, there are other contradictions in the story, or basically in the whole SCP mythos, because nothing is really canon and these guys don't really care what they write, so there you go. But anyways, I think that going off of like the consistency and the power that the Scarlet King has shown, then he should be able to win the vast majority of these battles because, I mean, he is pretty damn chatty. So anyways, I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I did a lot of research on it. It was quite hard for me to, really think of a conclusion because it is really complex. And I will be doing more videos like these in the future, so please subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll catch you thotties next time. Peace out.